Welcome to another deep dive. We've got some really cool stuff to explore today, all about the future of the space industry.
Should be fun.
Right. We've got this great interview with Peter Beck, the CEO of RKLB, and then a really interesting segment from the Space Minds podcast from Space News.
Sounds like a good mix.
Yeah, it is. So we're basically going to use these sources to kind of look at, like, Beck's vision for where things are headed and also how that matches up with, like, what's actually happening in the industry right now.
It's moving so fast, it's hard to keep up.
I know, right? It's insane. But that's what makes it so interesting. So, okay, first up, Peter Beck. He's not your typical CEO, right? Like, he didn't just see, like, oh, space is hot, let me make some money.
No.
Like, his passion for this stuff goes way back.
Yeah, his story is pretty fascinating. Like, growing up in Invercargill, New Zealand, one of the most southern towns in the world, he talks about stargazing with his dad and, like, wondering if anyone was looking back at them from those stars. Almost sounds like his personal, like, overview effect, like that shift astronauts talk about when they see Earth from space.
I love that, yeah. Like his own earthbound overview effect.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that really blew my mind. When they ask him, like, what's your biggest motivator? What drives you? You know what he says.
What's that?
Not money, not fame.
Fear of failure.
Fear of failure.
Fear of failure.
Really? Surprising, right?
It is a little bit. But I guess when you think about it, like, that productive paranoia or whatever you want to call it, it makes sense for an engineer, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like, always thinking about what could go wrong so you build it better. And you see that in Rocket Lab's whole approach,
Yeah.
Very methodical, sustainable.
Like their Electron rocket.
Exactly. Reusable design, the whole Catch Me If You Can program with the helicopter and parachute. I mean, talk about planning for recovery.
That's productive paranoia in action. So Beck's got this clear engineering mindset, but he also, like, thinks big picture. He talks about Rocket Lab as a space company, not just a launch company. What's the difference?
Well, it's about controlling the whole process, right? They build their own spacecraft. R&D launch them, like SpaceX. Vertical integration is what they call it.
Vertical integration.
Oh.
So they're not just relying on other companies for parts of the process.
Exactly. Give them more control, more flexibility.
And he uses Starlink as an example.
Right.
SpaceX's satellite internet thing.
Yeah, how that completely changed the game for commercial comms.
Right. Disrupted the whole industry. So how can anyone even compete with these giants? SpaceX, Blue Origin, all that.
Well, I think Rocket Lab's strategy is more about being specialized. Smaller launches, really sophisticated space systems, and then eventually scaling up with the Neutron rocket when that's ready.
So they're playing the long game.
Yeah, building a strong foundation, not just chasing the biggest, loudest thing.
Makes sense. Okay, now let's switch gears a little bit and look at what's happening in the space industry more broadly. Remember all the talk about a lunar economy?
Oh, yeah.
At first, I was like, okay, whatever, buzzword. But then listening to Space Minds, it's like, whoa, this is actually real.
Things are definitely moving.
Robotic lunar landers getting prepped, intuitive machines launching in February. It's all happening.
It is, and it's not just about science anymore. Like, China being so invested in the moon, that's a big part of this.
Yeah, geopolitics. Who gets a piece of the moon?
Exactly. It's a whole new space race driven by national interests and commercial companies. So Rocket Lab's got to navigate that carefully.
On one hand, it's great. Right. Like more investment, faster development, but yeah, more competition, higher stakes.
For sure.
And speaking competition, how about that Blue Origin New Glenn rocket finally getting ready to launch? What's the big deal with that one?
Well, it's a heavy lift rocket, way bigger payloads than what Electron can handle.
So this means like missions to the moon, deep space, all the...
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to have another player, right? Not just SpaceX dominating everything.
Diversifies the market. Good point.
Yeah, more competition usually leads to more innovation.
Okay, so we've got lunar landers, new rockets, geopolitical maneuvering, and then there's Peter Beck working on a privately funded mission to Venus in his spare time.
Right. That's just wild.
So that's got to be a passion project, right?
Yeah.
Like, he just can't resist.
It seems like it. Goes back to that childhood fascination with finding life beyond Earth. And this mission, they're literally going to look for signs of life in the Venusian atmosphere. Microbial life.
Venus, though, that's a pretty harsh environment, right?
It is. The surface, I mean, forget about it. Crazy hot, super high pressure. But the clouds, some scientists think, could be more temperate. Maybe some microbes could hang out there.
Didn't the Soviets send probes to Venus way back?
They did. The Venera program back in the 70s and 80s landed several probes. Amazing feat of engineering, considering how tough it is there.
Makes you realize how far we've come, but also how much we still don't know.
Exactly. So Beck's team, they're going to be looking for phosphine, that gas that some microbes produce, and extremophiles, those crazy creatures that love extreme environments.
Like a real-life science fiction story.
It is. Shows you the power of individual passion, even amidst all the big companies and governments.
All right, before we get too lost in the clouds of Venus, let's end this section with a little fun fact. Peter Beck. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Oh, good one.
He's a Trekkie. Apparently he met William Shatner once, and that sealed the deal.
Classic. That's always a good debate in the space community.
Right. It's like even rocket scientists have their sci-fi faves.
It humanizes it all a bit,
Totally. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Beck's vision, Rocket Lab's strategy, the lunar economy heating up, and even a trip to Venus.
Yes.
It really feels like the space industry is at this, tipping point, wouldn't you say?
Definitely does.
So much is happening at once. Governments, private companies, investors, everyone's jumping in.
It's like this convergence of different sectors,
Right.
all focused on space.
And, the news you shared about NASA swabbing the ISS for microbial life.
Whoa, yeah, that was mind-blowing.
What? They're looking for tiny aliens on a space station?
Well, not exactly aliens, but they want to know, do spacecraft accidentally release microbes into space? And if so, what happens to them? How do they survive?
So it's about understanding how life can exist in those extreme conditions.
Yeah, and the effects of space radiation on bacteria. Important stuff for long-duration space travel, Gotta keep our astronauts and equipment safe.
Makes sense. So not aliens, but still super cool.
Definitely.
It makes you wonder, though, if we find life on Venus or even on the ISS, what does that mean for the possibility of life, out there in the universe?
It's a huge question, right? If life can exist in those places, what about all those other planets and moons we haven't even explored yet?
Right. How much life is out there that we don't even know about?
It's mind-boggling.
It is. Okay, but before we get totally lost in the cosmos, let's bring it back down to Earth for a second. We keep talking about this lunar economy, but what does that actually mean?
Right, good point. It's basically all the economic activity that could happen on the moon. Resource extraction, manufacturing, tourism, research, all that.
So, what kind of resources are we talking about?
Well, the moon has things that are scarce on Earth. Helium-3, for example, which could be used for fusion power, and rare earth elements that we need for electronics.
Wow. So we could actually reduce our reliance on Earth's resources by utilizing the moon's.
Exactly. Plus, the moon's low gravity and lack of atmosphere make it ideal for certain types of manufacturing.
Like what? Give me an example.
Imagine building huge, delicate structures in space, like giant space telescopes or solar panels. The low gravity would make it way easier.
That's amazing. And what about lunar tourism? Is that actually realistic?
Oh, yeah, for sure. As space travel gets cheaper, imagine taking a trip to the moon, walking on the surface, seeing Earth from up there, exploring historic landing sites.
That would be incredible.
And then there's the research potential. The moon is like a giant science lab. It can teach us about the early solar system, planetary science, even the origins of life.
So it's not just about making money. It's about advancing science and understanding our place in the universe.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Okay, now, we can't ignore the geopolitical stuff, right? China's presence on the moon.
Yeah.
How does that impact the whole picture?
Well, it's driving competition, that's for sure. The U.S., Russia, Europe, they all want to get in on the action, which can be good, It pushes everyone to innovate faster.
But it also creates tension, right?
Yeah, definitely. Potential conflicts over resources, strategic positioning. It's a complex situation.
So companies like Rocket Lab have to walk a fine line.
They do. Collaborate with international partners, but also stay competitive. It's a balancing act.
It's fascinating to watch it all unfold. It seems like the space industry is changing faster than ever. What do you think are the biggest trends right now?
Well, one of the most exciting things is that space is becoming more accessible. The cost of launching stuff into orbit has gone down significantly.
That's huge.
It is.
Yeah.
Because now you have more small businesses, research groups, even individuals getting involved. More diversity, more ideas.
That's awesome. What about specific technologies? What are you most excited about?
In space manufacturing, for sure, like we talked about, using the unique conditions of space to build things, maybe even giant space stations or solar power satellites assembled in orbit.
Whoa, that's wild.
I know, right? But it could happen. And of course, the search for extraterrestrial life is always exciting.
Yeah, like Beck's mission to Venus. What if they actually find something?
It would be huge, right? Like proof that we're not alone in the universe.
It would change everything.
It would. Okay, but let's shift gears for a second. we've been talking about all this amazing stuff, but what does it mean for the average person? Like, why should someone who's not a rocket scientist care about space?
That's a fair question. But the truth is, space exploration impacts all of us, even if we don't realize it. Think about GPS, satellite communication, medical imaging. Those all came from space tech.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and studying other planets helps us understand our own planet better, like climate change, resource management, all that. It's all connected.
So it's not just about space. It's about improving life here on Earth.
Exactly. It's an investment in our future.
And it's pretty inspiring, too.
It is. It reminds us that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Okay, before we wrap up this section, one last thought. You mentioned NASA swabbing the ISS for microbial life. What if they find something truly weird? Like something that doesn't resemble any life we know on Earth?
That would be mind-blowing, wouldn't it?
What would that mean for our understanding of, like, life itself? It would mean we need to rethink everything. Like, how did life begin? Did it start in multiple places? Did it spread across the cosmos? So many questions.
It would be a huge paradigm shift.
It would be. Okay, so we've explored the future of space travel, the lunar economy, the search for alien life, all these big ideas. Where do we go from here? What's the next step?
Well, that's a great question. And it's one that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the world of space exploration. But for now, let's take a quick break and then come back to discuss what all of this means for the average person and how they can get involved in this exciting field.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back after this short break. All right, we're back and ready to dive even deeper into this whole space thing.
Let's do it.
So we've been talking about all this crazy stuff happening in space, rockets, moon bases, maybe even life on other planets. But like, how does this affect regular people? You know, people who aren't astronauts or billionaires?
Right. That's a good question. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement and forget that space exploration, it does have real-world implications for everyone.
Exactly. So how does it, though? Like, what's the connection between space and our everyday lives?
Well, think about it. A lot of the technology we use every day, it came from space research, like GPS, satellite TV, even some medical imaging techniques.
Oh, wow. I never really thought about that.
Yeah. And then there's the whole, understanding our planet better. Studying other planets helps us learn about Earth's climate, its resources, all that.
So it's not just about exploring the unknown. It's about using that knowledge to solve problems here at home.
Exactly. Space exploration can actually help us make life on Earth better.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the future? Like, what are some of the things that are going to, really change the game for space exploration in the years to come?
Well, one thing is definitely cost, right? Like, launches are getting cheaper, which means more people can participate.
Right. So it's not just going to be like NASA and a few big companies anymore.
No, it's opening up to smaller companies, startups, even individuals, which is really exciting because it means more innovation, more ideas.
Yeah, totally. It's like democratizing space.
Exactly. And then there's the technology itself. Like, reusable rockets are already a thing, but they're going to get even better, even cheaper.
What about, actually living in space? Like, on the moon or Mars? Is that ever going to be a reality?
It's definitely possible. There are already plans for lunar bases and eventually maybe even Mars colonies. But it's going to take time and a lot of technological advancement.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not like just building a house, right?
No, not at all. There are so many challenges. Like, how do you create a sustainable environment? How do you protect people from radiation? How do you deal with, the psychological effects of being so far away from Earth?
Right. Those are all huge questions. Okay, but let's say we do figure all that out. What would it even be like to live on, say, the moon? Like, what would people do all day?
Well, there's going to be a lot of work to do, that's for sure. Like, building and maintaining the base, conducting research, exploring the surrounding area.
So not exactly like a vacation on the beach.
No, not quite. But it would be an incredible adventure. And who knows, maybe there will be lunar tourism one day.
Imagine that. Taking a trip to the moon.
It could happen. Okay, but let's talk about something a little closer to home. Remember we mentioned NASA swabbing the ISS for microbes?
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
So what if they find something? Like, what if they actually discover some kind of life that originated in space?
Whoa, that would be huge.
It would change everything we know about life, wouldn't it? Like, where did it come from? How did it get here? Is it everywhere?
It would be mind-blowing. But also kind of scary,
Maybe a little. but mostly exciting, I think. It would mean we're not alone in the universe. And who knows, maybe there are other intelligent beings out there too.
That's a whole other conversation.
It is. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the future of space travel, the challenges of living on other planets, the search for extraterrestrial life. What's the takeaway from all of this? Like, what should people be thinking about?
That's a good question. I think the biggest takeaway is that space exploration is more than just like rockets and astronauts. It's about pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, understanding our place in the universe, and ultimately making life better here on Earth.
I agree. And it's also about inspiration, like looking up at the stars and realizing that anything is possible.
Yeah, totally. It's about dreaming big.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big picture. But what about like concrete steps? What can people actually do to get involved in space exploration, even if they're not, scientists or engineers?
Right, that's a good point. Because it can feel kind of overwhelming, like, how can one person make a difference in something as vast as space?
Well, there are actually a lot of things people can do. Like, first of all, just learn about it. Read books, watch documentaries, follow space news.
Yeah, stay informed.
Exactly. And then there are organizations you can support, like the Planetary Society, the Space Foundation, NASA itself.
And what about, like, actually working in the space industry? Is that something that's, like, only for certain types of people?
Not at all. There are so many different roles in the space industry, from engineering and science to business and communications.
So there's something for everyone, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And if you're passionate about space, there's definitely a place for you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the future of space travel, the search for life beyond Earth, the challenges and opportunities of living on other planets. It's clear that space exploration is going to continue to be a huge part of our future. But what are some of the ethical considerations we need to be thinking about as we venture further into space? Like, who owns the moon? Who gets to decide what happens out there?
Yeah, those are big questions, and there aren't easy answers, but it's definitely something we need to be talking about now before things get too far along.
Exactly. We don't want to repeat the mistakes we've made here on Earth, with colonialism and exploitation.
Absolutely. We need to be mindful of the potential impact of our actions on other planets and celestial bodies, and we need to make sure that space exploration benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
It's a big responsibility.
It is. But it's also an incredible opportunity. We have the chance to do things right this time, to create a future where space exploration is a force for good in the world.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about space exploration being a source of inspiration. Can you expand on that a little? Like, why is it so important for people to dream about space?
Well, I think space exploration reminds us that anything is possible, Like, we humans, we're capable of achieving incredible things when we set our minds to it. And looking up at the stars, it just gives you this sense of wonder and possibility.
Yeah, it makes you feel small, but also kind of powerful at the same time.
Exactly. And I think we need that, In a world that can often feel very limited and constrained, space exploration gives us a glimpse of something bigger, something beyond ourselves. And that's something worth dreaming about, even if we never actually get to go to space ourselves.
Yeah, it's like it puts things in perspective,
Totally. Makes you realize that our problems here on Earth, they're not so big in the grand scheme of things.
Right. It's like, zoom out, look at the bigger picture.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked a lot about like the future of space exploration, the technology, the challenges, all that. But I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. Peter Beck's mission to Venus.
Ah, yes. The phosphine-seeking extremophile hunting adventure.
Right. It's such a cool project. And it really gets at like one of the most fundamental questions humans have ever asked. Are we alone in the universe?
It's a question that's been driving us for centuries.
I mean, think about it. Every civilization throughout history has looked up at the stars and wondered, is there someone else out there?
And now we're actually getting closer to answering that question.
We are. And that's thanks to people like Peter Beck who are willing to take risks, push the boundaries, and just go for it.
And it's not just about finding aliens, right? It's about understanding the nature of life itself.
That's a good point. Like, if we find life on Venus, or even just evidence that life existed there at some point, it would tell us so much about how life can adapt and evolve in different environments.
It would expand our definition of what's possible.
Exactly. And it would make the universe seem even more, like, teeming with potential,
Yeah, totally. It's like if life can exist in the clouds of Venus, then where else could it be hiding?
Right. It opens up a whole universe of possibilities.
Okay, so let's say Beck's mission is successful. they find evidence of life on Venus. What happens next? Like, what are the implications for humanity?
Well, first of all, it would be huge news. Like, front page of every newspaper, top story on every news channel. The whole world would be talking about it.
It would be a global event.
It would be. And it would definitely spark a lot of debate. Like, what do we do now? Do we try to contact this life? Do we study it from afar? How do we make sure we don't contaminate it?
Those are all important questions.
They are. And there are no easy answers. But I think it would also be a moment of incredible unity for humanity. Like, imagine everyone on Earth coming together to celebrate this discovery, this realization that we're not alone in the universe.
It would be a profound shift in our understanding of our place in the cosmos.
It would. And it would probably inspire a whole new wave of space exploration. Like, if there's life on Venus, then we got to go find it on other planets and moons, too.
It would open up so many new frontiers.
It would. And who knows what we might find.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of big ideas here. The future of space travel, the search for extraterrestrial life, the ethical implications of exploring other worlds. But what does it all mean for the average person? Like, why should someone who's not a scientist or an astronaut care about any of this?
Well, I think there are a few reasons. First of all, space exploration is just inherently cool, right? Like, who doesn't love looking up at the stars and wondering what's out there?
It's definitely awe-inspiring.
It is. And I think that sense of wonder is important, you know? It reminds us that there's more to life than just our everyday problems, that there's a whole universe out there waiting to be explored.
And it's not just about the cool factor, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are practical benefits to space exploration, too.
Oh, absolutely. Like we talked about earlier, a lot of the technology we use every day came from space research. And as we continue to explore space, we're going to develop even more new technologies that will improve our lives here on Earth.
So it's an investment in our future.
It is. And I think it's also important for us to remember that we're all part of this planet, you know? Like, Earth is our home and we need to take care of it. But space exploration reminds us that we're also part of something much bigger, something that extends far beyond the boundaries of our little blue planet.
Gives us perspective.
Exactly. It helps us to see ourselves as citizens of the universe, not just citizens of one particular country or planet.
That's a powerful idea.
It is. And it's one that I think is more important than ever in today's world. Like, with all the division and conflict we see around us, I think space exploration has the potential to bring people together, to remind us that we're all in this together.
It's a shared human endeavor.
Exactly. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the future of the space industry, I think it's safe to say that things are pretty exciting right now.
Definitely. Lots of new developments, lots of possibilities.
Yeah.
And who knows what the future holds.
That's the beauty of it, right? The unknown is what makes it so compelling.
Absolutely. So, to all our listeners out there, keep looking up, keep dreaming big, and never lose your sense of wonder. Because the future of space exploration is bright, and it's one that we can all be a part of.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And until next time, keep exploring.